Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another one of our Financial Fridays, but more so Financial Tuesdays. Today's topic is financial aid, and we're going to be led by Max of the Mississippi Center for Justice. And I'm going to hand it over to you, Max, to go and get started.
Hi, it's great to be with everybody today. I hope folks are doing well after the long weekend. I also want to say hello to my colleague Yumika, who's joining us from the Indianola office. We are excited to talk with you today about financial aid. This is something that, well, I'll also say this is our first time doing a Financial Tuesday instead of a Financial Friday. So I hope everybody still shows up, and if not, people can go ahead and can catch a recording of this. But today we're going to talk about financial aid. Before we get into that, I want to let's see, there we go. I want to review a couple questions that we got related to retirement from our last Financial Friday. So one person asked, what are some other possible plans outside of a 401k and a pension, which are typically savings programs that are provided by employers? In other words, what are some other plans that people can use outside of their employer plans to save? The IRA and a Roth IRA are the two big ones that I would say. Those are essentially like private 401ks that people are able to use to save for this retirement. And then another question: how can I retire early? And what is the minimum age that I can retire? People can retire early, through savings or through, realistically, savings is about it. Unless someone's able to, win the lottery or something like that, typically people are going to be limited based on the financial planning that they put in place. There is no minimum age for retirement. I took that question though, that someone asked to be, what's the minimum age for Social Security? That's 62, but the full Social Security, so you would receive a lesser amount than your full amount if you take it at 62, but you'll actually get that full Social Security amount each month when you turn 70. And then someone asked about the average amount of time that a retirement fund can last. I don't have an answer for that because people live different lengths of time and start retirement at different ages. So the key thing to think about is saving enough money so that you'll have 80% of your current monthly income in retirement. So that would mean that your 401k or your pension or your IRA plus whatever Social Security payment you're going to be getting will be able to provide you with that 80% or more each month. All right, let's go ahead and jump into financial aid. I am particularly excited to talk about this. I used to, as some of you all know, I used to teach elementary school up in Moorhead, Mississippi. And so that was about 10 or 12 years ago. And a lot of my former students just applied for financial aid through FAFSA and are, in college right now. And, things look different now than they did when I was in college versus, when folks are trying to apply now. There have been some subtle changes, so it's always good to have a refresher course. So generally speaking, before we get into FAFSA, it's important to talk about what financial aid is and what it consists of. Financial aid consists of three general categories of money that come from the college level. One is scholarships and grants. You think of things like that being free money. So that would include scholarships for, that you apply to independently. So let's say that your children are, really into science, and there's like a national science scholarship that you find online. You can apply for that, and that can, each of those can add up. They might only be $500 here or $1,000 there, but those can really collect and build up and create a substantial piece of change for people that are going to college, in addition to scholarships that the university or college might be providing. So I know that that a lot of schools have scholarships specifically for first generation college students. Those are people who are the first in their families to go to college. as well as scholarships for particularly talented academic students. So people who had a certain grade point average in high school, they'll automatically be given some scholarships depending on where they apply to, as well as grants. Grants typically are going to be things like Pell Grant, which we'll talk about in a second. That is a grant that is specifically given to children, students from households that are low-income households, and then also beyond that, there will be grants from schools that will also be applied depending on need-based student needs, so income needs. There's also loans. These are money that you have to pay back. They come both in the form of federal or public loans, and then private loans. Private loans, I'll start there. Those are taken through a bank. They are not part of, like the federal loan forgiveness program, for example. They are wholly separate by themselves. They have different interest rates. They think of those more as almost like a mortgage or something like that. They don't come as a result of filling out the FAFSA, which we'll talk about in a second. Whereas federal loans, those are offered through the government. I call them public loans. They're typically subsidized, which means that you get a lower interest rate than a bank might be able to provide you. And those are also, as being federal loans, those also are eligible for loan forgiveness, which we'll talk about later on in today's presentation. So that's something to keep in mind. And those will come as a result of filling out your FAFSA. And then lastly, another type of financial aid is work study. This is given to students who qualify for it, again, based on household income. And they are, it's geared up basically to provide students with a designated job opportunity on campus. So I love to talk about my experiences in school. I had I had three different jobs through work study. The way that it worked, I went to Michigan, and the way that it worked there was I filled out the FAFSA form, and in my financial aid package that they gave me, in addition to scholarships and grants and then some loans, they also had up to, I'm going to make up a number, I think it was like up to $5,000 each semester that the school would pay either the school itself or an affiliated employer, which I'll talk about what that is, to employ me as a student worker. So I worked both for the university in the cafeteria. I did the dishes after meals and received pay for that. And then I also worked off campus with a non-affiliated employer, Habitat for Humanity, which as a nonprofit, they were eligible to receive students and to work there, and then the university gave them money to pay me for the work that I did. The maximum amount of Pell Grant, so again, that's for students who are from lower income households. And I believe the $6,495 that's per year, and I believe that's given for students who qualify for the maximum amount. That's for households that are below the federal poverty line. If you don't know what those numbers are, you can just Google federal poverty line 2022, and you'll be able to see what those income levels are based on the number of people living in your household. Another thing that I like to say is to talk with your financial aid office at the school. Make sure that you're meeting all the deadlines for FAFSA. Make sure that they are confirming and updating your income periodically. And also, if you have any questions about what shows up on that financial aid package report that they're going to give you, they'll be able to walk you through it, because a lot of these things are, again, like work study, subsidized loans or unsubsidized loans. I mean, there are a lot of different kinds of language, and that financial aid office is really meant to be there as a partner for you and your student. Search out scholarships, I already mentioned that, and then make sure that your household income is always confirmed for your student's FAFSA account. Okay, let's talk about what FAFSA is. So it stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. One important thing, and I'm gonna hopefully remember to say this again throughout the course of today. But if I don't, then please tell everybody as many times as you can. It is a free application to fill out. It's also through the government. when you go to apply for FAFSA, make sure that you're going to the FAFSA.gov. It has to be a .gov website. There are, I don't know what, there are bad people out there. I mean, I feel bad saying bad people. There are people out there that have made private businesses that have a .com or a .net that will actually, that's, like FAFSA.com, for example, they're going to charge you money to fill out a FAFSA application. Don't do that. That's because they're betting, right, and they're correct, that most people are going to just type in FAFSA.com and then think, oh, I have to pay $25 to fill out this application. That makes sense. When in reality, it is free, and it's a .gov. So make sure that you find the correct website. The deadline for the 2022-2023 academic year is September 10th, 2022. Make sure that you are, that you're, again, in communication with your college's financial aid office, your student's college financial aid office, to make sure that you have all of your requirements and documentation in there. You need to also review or renew the FAFSA each year and accept the package each year. And it's currently open. So I want to just emphasize again that what the FAFSA does is you are essentially, as the parent, you are uploading all of your current financial information, your tax returns from last year, information about your home ownership or the cost that you have for rent, for example, any and everything that you can possibly think of related to your household finances. That's going to go into the FAFSA, and the federal government, which is in control of that FAFSA application, you are allowed to pick 10 schools that the federal government will then send that package to, for those schools' financial aid offices to process and tell you how much money you're going to get. Most of that, so some of the stuff will be the same no matter what school you're in. A Pell Grant, for example, if your student qualifies for a Pell Grant, your student will be eligible for that at any of the schools that they're given, that they apply to. Other things, though, I'm trying to think of a good example of one. And so, I mean, I know Mississippi State and the University of Mississippi each have their own financial aid packages for students that meet certain requirements with the ACT and then also with GPAs. And those are different based on which school you apply to. And they still are going to use, though, that's all going to be included in your financial aid package. So it'll show up saying, oh, you get a full Pell Grant, and because of your ACT, SAT, you get $1,500 every semester. And I'm making these numbers up at Mississippi State. And then, but if you go to University of Mississippi, it's going to be $1,200 a semester. So the point of this is that they give you these 10 schools to send. You're able to send this information to 10 different schools, because you should be, first of all, applying to lots of schools. Also, side note, if you are worried, which you should be, because a lot of these schools charge like $75 just to apply to the school, you can contact their admissions office and request a fee waiver for the application. And a lot of times also the high school counseling office will be able to have a certain number of these fee waivers that they can give you. And that's the same thing for the ACT as it is for completing these applications for college admissions. So make sure that you check that out, because I mean, think about it, each one costs $75 multiplied by 10, that's $750 that you're just spending to apply to college. You don't even know if you're going to get accepted or not. So check to see if there are fee waivers available. And then beyond that, I would say, really utilize the 10 schools so that you're given options, your student is given options, so that they can see, how much money in work study they're going to get here versus, scholarships or grants there. Okay. So another thing I want to make clear is that FAFSA is just for the federal level. That's like the initial information that you give them. Each school, and I had this, at Michigan, and then also when I went to law school as well, I had to complete at the University of California, had their own separate university-based financial aid service that you have to do. A lot of times it's going to be called like MAFSA, like Mississippi Application for Finance. It's going to be state-based or a university-based. I know both Mississippi State and University of Mississippi, as well as Delta State and the community colleges, also all have separate financial aid applications for students to complete. Again, speak with your college's financial aid office. Make sure that your income levels are updated and verified. Let's talk about savings fund. I'm going to get a quick drink of water. Good. All right. There are two primary savings funds through the state that exist for parents getting ready to send their kids to college, planning for college. The one on the left is the Mississippi Affordable College Savings Program, or the MAX. I'll talk about what that does. And the other one is the Mississippi Prepaid Affordable College Tuition Plan, or the MPAC. They do two different things. So on the left, what you see with the MAX is that it basically lets you set up a savings account that's tax advantaged, meaning that it's taxed at a different rate, so you're not going to pay all the money in taxes on it, for your child to be able to use. So it's like a separate special savings account just for college expenses and tuition that you can use that's taxed at a lower rate. So if you are, if you've got a kid and you are sending that kid to college, I would say, this is a good option, better option than just, putting money in a savings account, because again, of the tax benefit that you get from having it. It takes $25 to get started, and pretty much anybody can open one, including parents, grandparents, relatives, friends, and they can also make contributions. And then right there, you can see it can be used for tuition, books, supplies, room and board expenses, overall, it's a solid savings plan. The MPAC is a little bit different. I actually had to look this up. I didn't know that this thing existed, so I had to spend some time doing some research on this to see what it was. Essentially, what it is it's a way for you now to purchase tuition in the future at a set locked rate. I'll say at the outset, nothing is guaranteed. We might have some crazy reform in the hopefully, for the sake of our next generation, where we make college a lot more affordable for people, and people aren't paying thousands and thousands of dollars for tuition each semester. But as it is right now, it's getting more and more expensive each academic year for tuition. What this does, and I didn't want to pull up the actual numbers so you can see. It says click here for pricing. You want to check it out, I would say just all you have to do is just Google Mississippi College Savings Accounts, and it'll take you to this website. And you can actually look at what the pricing looks like. But essentially what it does is it allows you to lock in tuition rates and prepay your kids' college tuition. There are some specific requirements there about enrollment. So you'll see there it's open from September 1st to May 31st. But for newborn babies, you can open it up whenever, and that money can only be used for college tuition and mandatory fees. All right, repaying your student loans. There are a little bit less than 500,000 Mississippians with student debt. So again, this is when the distinction between private student loans and public student loans really starts to have an impact. The most noticeable one is for the 10-year public service loan forgiveness program, which is basically if you work for 10 years after college in nonprofit, so like a 501c3, that's like Yumika and my organization, the Mississippi Center for Justice, is a 501c3, means a nonprofit, or for a government agency for 10 years, and you make on-time student loan payments for each of those 10 years, then the entire balance of your student loans will get forgiven, but only the public ones, the ones that are from the government. Your private loans, so if you had to take out Navient loans, for example, or take out loans from Freddie Mae, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, those will not be part of the forgiveness. It's one thing important to note is that the 10 years, they don't have to be continuous. So if you miss 1 month, for example, that's fine. It's a total of 10 years worth of on-time payments. So 10 times 12 is 120. 10 times 12 is 120. So basically what that means is you need to have 120 on-time monthly payments of your student loans. All of it will be erased. Now, for some people who have hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt, this is actually a really great option, because chances are it would take you, 30 years or something to pay this back. But if you're someone who has like $4,000 in student loans or something like that, like a low amount, this might not be the best option for you, because chances are the salary that you're going to be able to get at working for a private organization, in my case, that'd be like a private corporate law firm or something like that, would make up the difference that I would be otherwise losing if I were to go for like a nonprofit or a government agency for the 10-year public loan service forgiveness. So always, consult that to think about, what would that look like for you? What would make the most logical sense for you at that point? Currently, so forbearance, I want to talk about that. Forbearance is the definition of that is like a pause or freeze on payments. It doesn't mean that your money is going away. It doesn't mean that that you're not responsible for it. It just means that you have a pause without getting any kind of late fees. What that also means is that even though you're not making payments and you're not being penalized in the sense that you're not getting like a $50 late fee or something like that, you are still getting charged interest for that time. So most students are able, most student loan payers are able to take out or are able to ask for a forbearance period if they can't pay for it, especially coming right out of college. A lot of kids get an automatic forbearance period of 6 months or a year. That can be really helpful, of course, because you don't have to make payments during that time. But again, what started out as maybe $50,000 after not paying, after having a 1-year forbearance period, and during that period, you're still, you have like a 5% interest rate or something, that's, you could be getting at the end of that, your $50,000 loan that you owe might end up actually being $55,000 or something like that. If I was a quick math guy, I would be able to tell you these numbers right off of that. But just trust me with these examples. What I'm saying is that if you don't pay anything because you're in forbearance, after a year, you're going to owe more money than what you started off with because of all the interest that you're going to be accruing. There is a nice version of forbearance that I didn't know existed until COVID, which is, there is a current freeze on student loan, again, for public student loans. This does not apply to private, where right now, the federal government is not requiring you to pay per month. And right now, we're also not accruing interest, which is really a very unique type of forbearance. On top of that, right now, since, during this COVID forbearance, which is set to expire in August or September, but people are hoping, I'm hoping that it continues to beyond that. If you are currently employed during this period of forbearance at a nonprofit or a government agency, these non-payment months, so my case exactly, I still have student loans. I'm working towards 10-year public service loan forgiveness. I work for a nonprofit right now. I have not had to make loan payments since the beginning of COVID, which has been great. And I also have not been getting charged interest during this time, which is also great. And then on top of that, each of the months that I'm not paying that I otherwise would have had to pay during COVID, those months are counting towards my 10 years of towards my 120 on-time monthly payment that I need to have in order to qualify. So, I mean, in the last 2.5 years, that's been like probably 30. So, I mean, that's like almost a quarter, basically, like a quarter of my 10 years will consist of non-payments, which is really great. I mean, and that's the same for everybody else. You didn't have to apply for that. That was automatically given. That, I believe, yes, that was the end of my show, which works perfectly because 11:30. I always encourage people, again, just to go over the big picture things. Talk to your school's financial aid office about FAFSA. They can actually help you along with the progress to make sure you're meeting all the goals. And before you start accepting financial aid packages, think about what is a public versus what is free money versus money you have to pay back, and then what is of the money you have to pay back, what is going to be subsidized, which is a great interest rate, versus unsubsidized, not the best. And then also, do you really need to take out that private loan, or can you just try to do some work study? So those are things to keep in mind. I really appreciate everybody coming out today, and I'm sure I'll get some questions for next time, which will be a nice little treat to have to remind me of everybody of the financial aid stuff. So until then, take care. Thank you. and I will yield my time now.
Also, the Laura and you were just coming out. Thank you so much, Max. I did want to make sure I emphasize some of the points that you have brought out. Please make sure that you are going to the correct website for FAFSA, especially, and also make sure that you are applying early. Just go and knock it out of the park since it's already free and you're just inputting information. And also make sure that you, if you are knowing exactly what school you want to go to, if you choose to pursue the college path, go to your financial aid office, get to know whomever your counselor is. Sometimes you have more than one counselor and it may be by your last name. And then make sure if you do so choose to have loans, keep account and make sure you check in every so often, because the one thing that I say and I've seen people do is if they end up dropping the class, it impacts your financial aid. And what can happen is you may have had free money for your financial aid package. And once you drop that one class, you essentially have to go to loans. So make sure that you're staying on top of what you can and cannot do for your package. And that changes, that differs depending on what school you go to. So thank you for emphasizing that, Max.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for the summary. That was all. Yeah. The I mean, really the .gov versus the .com for FAFSA seems like such a small thing, but I mean, it is everybody I talk to has that issue. So please check where you're applying.
Gotcha. Awesome. I did have one question that came in, and it was regarding the max and impact with Mississippi, which awesome. Thank you for letting me know about it, because I wasn't really sure what Mississippi had. I know different states have, different accounts for parents or for potential family members to input money into. But what if a child decides like later on they don't necessarily want to go down the college path? What happens to that money?
Well, that sounds like a great question for next time, because I don't have the answer for that. I mean, yeah, I have a couple guesses, but I don't want to guess and give people wrong information. If it's all right, I will research that answer and give it to everybody at the next one. I would be shocked if people lost that money altogether. Most likely, what I'm imagining is that it's you can use it for something else, basically. I mean, especially the tuition money. The tuition money is just, that's money. That's just money is money. You just wouldn't be using it for tuition. But the other one, because of the tax benefits that people get from having that account, I imagine there might be something else happening there. So I'll research that and bring an answer for next time.
Awesome. And then I'll make sure I put it on the list of questions too, so that you can have it at the forefront for next time. And I think I had one other question regarding the off-campus affiliations that you had for work study, because I did not know that was possible, or certain schools had that option. So is that just is it somewhat similar to community service, where the school has a list and it depends on what school you go to that has those affiliations, or is that done by the county or the state?
It's a school by school basis, and I mean, and it's going to look different. So at Mississippi State, for example, there is a list of, I think it's actually on there. I know it's given to admitted students, and so let me try to track down a PDF so that you can see, or at least some of the sample ones. Obviously, it changes each semester, but there's a list of approved employers, and employers who are not on the list can apply to get on there. You basically just have to show your tax status and then agree to not be terrible people, and then they'll let you get on that list. But to answer the core of your question, it is a school by school basis, and it takes an actual agreement between the school and the employer. For example, I mean, thinking about it, the city of Jackson certainly could, I imagine, qualify to receive student work study people from any of the local schools in the area. I would be shocked if they did not. I know in addition to, I mean, and the other thing too is, in addition to working for Habitat for Humanity, I also work for, through student work aid or work study, I also work for Hillel, which is a religious, a student religious group on campus. Even though I'm not, really affiliated with that organization, they had positions open, and I applied and got to work there, and that was really great office experience. And that's the other thing I'll say too is that not everybody's going to be working in the cafeteria all the time. That's what I did for 2 years of that. But I was really happy, and I recommend to everybody that, most of the time the underclassmen or, freshmen, sophomores are going to have to, they're not going to have access to all the office jobs and stuff like that. But you can, reassess at the end of each year to see if there's other positions open and try to get an office job. I mean, that's really, that's how for students, that's how they're able to get experience on the resume that will benefit them after they graduate. Those work in my 2 work study office works, Habitat for Humanity and Hillel, those were the 2 top things on my resume when I went to apply for stuff after school, and that was all through financial aid. So
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you. And for everyone who's listened, and I feel like the main thing we're talking about, or we've been trying to emphasize, is definitely shoot for FAFSA. Make sure you apply for that ASAP. Shoot for your scholarships. And if you're a student in Mississippi, you can also look at Get to College, who has access to the various different scholarships available within the Mississippi branch of the statewide scholarships, but also some local scholarships. And in my experience, there's almost a scholarship available for entirely any kind of organization that you've engaged with, whether it's a grocery store, your local banks, some of the fast food restaurants, they have their own kind of local scholarships, and also your districts, they'll have some scholarships for you to use. So please don't feel like there's a scholarship out there that you can't necessarily apply for, because you never know what you may get towards your education. Next month, I've had some people who've reached out regarding investments, and they want to dive a little bit more deeper into NFTs and cryptocurrency. That's kind of been becoming very popular right now. So next month, we're going to be having our first few minutes to continue these leftover questions regarding financial aid, and moving on into cryptocurrency and exactly what it is, and what can you do with it, and how you want to kind of dive into that topic for that. Please be on the lookout, because our website is going live by the end of this month. So next time we meet, you guys will have the link for that to see some of our previous videos, but also to hop on into our mailing list to get the newsletters or any other events that we're going to be putting on. Yumika, did you have any additional things you want to say before we end?
No, but it was great hearing Max speak about financial aid, because that was one of my favorite subjects as well. And it's good to see you all again.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, Max did an awesome job. Thank you. You guys enjoy the rest of your week. If you have any additional questions, especially for Max and Yumika, for the upcoming Financial Tuesdays that we're going to be having, please do not hesitate to email me at Maya.Lee@jacksonms.gov, and enjoy the rest of y'all day. See y'all.